my name is Emma Strebel, and I'm a GAF here at NYUAD, which entails, it stands for a Global Academic Fellow, and my focus is in visual arts. That basically means that I'm a resource for students and faculty, for conceptual or technical help. I primarily focus on sculpture, but I do a bit of everything, lead a lot of workshops. To start, I've been fairly obsessed with shadows for many, many years, much longer than I've been doing conceptual sculpture. And I get a lot of my inspiration from, I guess, just sort of like life around me, as I think most artists do. But I guess shadows have always sort of caught my eye, and I'm always working with this idea that shadows are actually all around us. It's the only, light is the only way that we can actually perceive and see our surroundings, but light doesn't exist without shadow. So this sort of counterpart idea of shadows is where I always find myself, my thoughts going back to. This piece I actually thought of quite a while ago. I think it was midsummer. I sort of envisioned this piece with different layers of material that caught light, and then when you sort of interact with the light, you then cast a shadow on different parts in space. So that idea has been mulling over in my head in different forms for many years. But specifically using string in space, I think it just sort of came out of having some string in my studio. As most things do, it's always like I turn on a light and then there's string, and I see it go through hair, and I think of hair as string, and then there's a shadow that it's just sort of this instant click on top of all different materials and moments that I've had that accumulate to one moment of that idea. But that's how this specific piece started. And then I didn't have the space and the time to actually complete it, because it takes a very specific, this piece specifically, it takes a very specific environment in order for it to actually be the piece, because it needs to be, no light in the room, and very specific lighting directed light on it, and also doing it in my studio. I had it in my studio for many months, and there was just so much clutter around it that you couldn't really experience it fully. So that's sort of how I arrived at this piece. And I figure, if not, we all perceive shadows very literally. I'll start in a very literal form, talking about dimensions, which we all sort of perceive shadows on a two-dimensional field, right? So when it hits an object, then we can see a shadow. But the shadow actually exists in that in-between space as well. So between my hand and the floor, there's also a shadow. It's just you can't see it. So that idea of something existing but not actually being able to be seen is really fascinating to me. And it also then becomes sort of three-dimensional, so it goes from a 2D perceivable or understandable thing to a 3D more in theory or in reality, but we can't see it, it exists. But it's always hard to understand those things. So I think for me that becomes really metaphorical and philosophical. just sort of drawn out to a way of life, because those things that you can see and you can understand are much easier to see and understand. But there's so much that happens in between you and me and the way that we position ourselves here in space, and the way that those sort of interactions go, that I'm really interested in. So thinking about, I think about these very physical, concrete representations of dimension in a more metaphorical way.
Definitely.
Sort of expanding out. I hope that people interact by actually sort of moving through the light. It's always hard to get people to feel comfortable, like doing odd movements and sort of looking around and changing their perspectives. But and my hope is also then that it sort of expands the idea of dimensions and shadows, and what a shadow is, and what shadows can be in different dimensions, is sort of understood by this sort of ghostly figure walking through. And also more concretely, I hope that it encourages people to interact with the light and sort of see the effects that it has. I definitely am always thinking about the next installation. I've got a few on back burners, and a few actually that I would like to do before I leave Abu Dhabi, because I'll be leaving end of May, not coming back. But I want to, there's so many pieces that I've been inspired to do because I'm here that I want to do before I leave. So those are, I think, more site-specific. I tend to be more interested in site-specific work. I'm always sort of thinking about the next installation. I've been actually working right here with different ways of understanding, like drawing the shadow out to 3 dimensions. So I'm casting shadows and doing all sorts of installation and sculpture, sort of like small scale and also big scale conceptual work. Or like right now it's in a conceptual place because it hasn't actually become a physical piece yet.